What you're interested in, I suppose, then, is authentic experience and how you can transfer that. I like what you said about realizing that you don't have to yield to a pre-existing paradigm of what performance is supposed to be, that once you're in that place you can just sort of go, I'll just do what I want, I'll just say what I like, particularly if you understand your own intention well. What do you think, what is your intention in that space, other than exploration of the last 7 years of various forms of suffering that you've described?
Well, there's probably a lot of intentions all intermingling, but I think the main one is to remind people that they're not alone. I mean, there's so little discussion, particularly around the topics of what it feels like to have an abortion, or to choose an abortion, or to have to make decisions about reproductive things, and and it's the same with miscarriage. It's just not something people want to chat about.
Tell me more about that. I would like to understand more. What were you talking about, like, in regard to abortion?
Well, I've had 3 abortions. I had my first one at 17, and it was sort of a very ordinary, oh my God, I'm in high school. I want to finish high school. It didn't really feel like that much of a difficult choice. But the experience was really harrowing, because while my mom, who I told was really supportive and even made the appointment at Planned Parenthood, while that little zone felt safe, no one had told me anything about what goes on in your head and what goes on in your heart when you walk through an experience like that. And also when you physically walk through, like, no one warned me that I was going to have to physically walk through a throng of people, not people across the street holding signs, but like I had to physically walk through a mob of people holding photographs of bloody fetuses this far from me.
Where did you go for the abortion?
Brookline, Massachusetts, to your neighborhood Planned Parenthood in my nice little suburb. But, this was 1993, and things have probably changed since then, but like I had to walk through that mob of people.
In your experience having that abortion, what do you feel? Is there anything that you identify with the pro-life side of the argument? What do you think is the germ or seed or genesis of their antipathy and that sounds like it's really contributing to making a difficult situation more stressful. But do you feel any identification with that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, our belief systems are so random sometimes. I mean, you're just raised to believe what your parents, your community, these random people in positions of power and authority hold out to you. And you take it and you believe it because of course you do, because that's safe, because your elders are teaching you what is good, what is bad, what is sacred, what is life. And in this case, if you really believe that a life begins at conception, and that's your belief system, and that's a person, and you've had that drilled into you, I can totally understand why abortion would seem barbaric.
Yeah.
But since I don't hold that belief system, I have this other belief system, I don't feel that way. But this is also why there's this other larger argument to be had about like who gets to make that decision. And this is why any discussion about abortion and reproductive rights to me always comes back to one main tenet, which is this is my body. You should trust me. You should trust me to know what to do. I am this body. I'm this woman. Why don't you trust me? Why don't you trust me to know and make my own decision? And that's what a lot of it comes down to, especially when you head back into history and you look at what societies have done when they want to control a bunch of people. And on the very top of that list is always control women's reproduction. And it's complicated. It's really complicated, especially if you're an empathetic and compassionate person and you don't want to just point to those people and say, oh, they're fucking crazy. Oh, they're bananas. They don't I do look at those people and who are, especially people who are really, really, really the crazy pro-life people who will come at me on Twitter and say, you're a baby killer. You should be put to death for wanting to do that. And I always try to put myself into their shoes and imagine, oh my God, what must it be like in there for you to want to say that to me and believe it?
Yeah, because if you, I was just thinking then that if you said if you've been indoctrinated into believing in the sanctity of life from the moment of conception, and sort of one of the things that's sort of problematic with that belief being ardently held, in my opinion, is that the sacredness of life then would be so sort of the correlative of that would mean that no poverty, no inequality, no homelessness, no cruelty, because life is sacred from the moment it begins to the moment it ends. That's like, so I'm down with it if
no death penalty,
if it's caveated in that manner. But like, see that thing of, like the sort of the sentiment that I recognise and actually understand. Like the idea of life, the sentimentality that must be present in the pro-life belief system. Do you share any of that? Because if not, then the process, if the process of abortion is entirely medical, then for the person going through it, the only emotional impact is an external one of people going, like, if we overnight pro-life disappeared, would having an abortion for a woman, or for you, because I suppose you can only speak for you, be just like cutting your toenails would no real meaning?
I know many, 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 many people who've terminated pregnancies. And I have heard almost no stories where it's just a visit to a doctor and just this thing I have to deal with.
Yeah.
It just isn't like that, And
so it's the same feeling. It's like the person going through the abortion and the protester. It's like my personal belief. If you're interested, it's not about my personal beliefs. This conversation about your beliefs, but mine is like, spirituality and what you believe is sacred is something that I practice for myself. It's not something that for example, more obvious example, I'm vegan, but if people hunt and shoot things and that, I'm like, oh right, yeah, I wouldn't be able to do that. It's not my thing, but it's none of my business. Crack on, that's your deal. So like I have no but I recognise this sort of sadness in it, and you say that's sadness, and my experience of abortion, which is obviously for women that I've known. It's like very, and also I've not been so affected by it. I'm not American. I've never known that kind of sort of that very draconian, active Christian mentality. I've never known that. So for me, I've only ever sort of gone, oh God, this is a horrible, difficult thing, isn't it? Isn't this a difficult thing? Like, it's not been in an overtly about the cultural attitude, but the personal, fuck me, this is a sad and difficult experience.